Rise and shine, YouTube. Today we're diving right into the review. This is going to be a late 2023 edition control pad roundup. So with that being said, today we're going to take a look at the Vaxee PB 2023. First, this pad is the only pad you'll see that was not sent out for review, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to nitpick the other pads, because that's not what reviewers do. Reviewers are going to take the pad, their experience with the pad, and give their opinions on it. Starting off first, like I said, Vaxee PB 2023 edition. I didn't use the last one prior, but this actually came to a surprise because I actually really do like this pad. Now, do I like it over another pad that I'll show off in a different video? No, but let's talk about this. This is a super smooth surface, right? There's no abrasiveness to it, so if you're looking for a non-abrasive pad, this is a pretty damn good pad. When you're coming to the skate feel on this pad, it's also super smooth. This is the stock skates on the WL mouse. And then we got some other skates. We got the dots glass from the Superglide V2 dots. We got the Obsidians from X-Ray pad. We got Tiger Ice V2. And then we got Tiger Ice dots. So we got a bunch of different mice with different skates to kind of get you a feel for what the different skates are going to feel like. WL mouse stock skates. It's more of a balanced kind of feel. It's not super controlled. It's not super tuggy. It's nothing like that at all, which is something that I like. When it comes down to this pad is very firm. It's dense, right? You're not getting plushiness to it like an X-Soft or a Soft or even some of the mids, right? The pad, like I said, it's thick. This is a thick pad, and it is pretty raised on your desk. There are no stitch edgings, and it's a rubber base. When it comes to the firmness of, though, this is probably my favorite kind of like base of a pad because I can put down pressure on the mouse and not really feel a tug to it like most other control pads on the market. When it comes down to the heavy-handed people, right, you are going to tend to like death grip a mouse. So with this surface, with this pad and the base, it works all around like well for anybody like who's light-handed, heavy-handed, all of that. You don't get a tug, you don't sink in, and you're good to go. When it comes down to glass skates, I got the glass dots Superglide V2s on my X2H Mini. This is a faster experience than the WL mouse stock skates for sure. And you can also press pretty hard on the pad and you still get a nice, good, kind of like smooth glide, right? You don't feel the texture at all from the glass skates. And it's pretty quick. I would put this in a kind of balance towards speed side with the glass dots on this pad. Super quick micro adjustments, no tug at all, pretty damn good. When it comes to Obsidians, in my opinion, are slower than the WL mouse skates, and I would put this pad then into a more control-oriented pad, not a balanced pad, because with the micro adjustments, you're still getting that freedom, right? You're not getting a tug between the small little movements here and there, and just overall glide is kind of more controlled. The Tiger Ice form fitted on my signature edition is a little quicker than Obsidian's, not by much, but still same thing. Micro adjustments are nice and smooth. There, it's open. You're not getting a tug. Bada bing, bada boom. And last but not least, the Tiger Ice dots. These are also pretty good, right? They are a little quicker than most of the form fitted, but you can press down on these, and this is where you get a little more different between glass dots and normal dots. Is pressing down on the dots, you get a little more control with these ones than even some of the form fitted. So take that as it is, and that's pretty much how I feel on this. But the Vaxee PB 2023 edition is probably one of my better performing pads the past few days on it than some of the other control pads you're about to look at. So let's move on to the next one. All right, next up on the list, we have the two pads from Tenta-X that were sent out. This is the Octo-Sense, and we'll take a look at the Octo-Grip. But overall feel on this pad, if you've used the Pels from the Whale, this is to me like almost a one-to-one kind of like copy of it. The design is sick in person, right? Nice monochrome kind of design. Looks pretty cool, even on cam. But the feel on the skin, right? It reminds me of the Pels to the T. And even the speed, right? You get a nice balanced speed glide where it's not like super tuggy. But when you put down a little more pressure, right? Even this alone doesn't feel as tuggy, right, as most other control pads. The thickness on this pad is pretty thick, right? It is a little denser feeling or thicker feeling than the Pels itself, and it has a pour-on base, so it doesn't move on your desk. But like I said, overall glide, it's like a balanced glide. Nothing that you haven't seen before, but we're going to talk about other skates. So the Obsidians from X-Ray Pad, right, I feel are slower than a WL mouse, right? So you're going to get a little more control out of it, and you get a little tug sensation with micro control on putting a little more pressure behind your kind of like glides. The Ryse V2 form fitted, right? This is definitely quicker than the Obsidians, and definitely a little better on the micro adjustments where you're not going to get as much tug as the Obsidians. An overall glide is a nice kind of balanced glide. When it comes to the Ryse V2 dots, this also has more of a balanced kind of glide, except when you put pressure down on it, because essentially you are kind of digging deeper into the pad with dots, and you're going to get more tuggy sensation out of it if you use dots on this pad, and if you're heavy-handed. Light-handed, though, you're not going to have a hard time, right? The pad itself is like a balanced kind of speed, and it feels pretty good with lighter hand kind of people. And last but not least, Super Glide V2 dots, right? Faster feeling than the other skates, right? Definitely a quicker experience. And when it comes to the micro adjustments, it feel like they actually get quicker the more pressure you put behind the mouse. And there is no tug on the micro adjustments or any kind of glide on this pad. It's just going to be quick. It's not going to be super slow. There's no tug. Bada bing, bada boom. So if you're somebody that wants this kind of design, but still kind of wants like a speed, you can do Super Glide V2 dots or form fitted, and it's still going to feel a lot quicker than out of a box with a different kind of skate that is PTFE or anything like that. So next up, we are going to take a look at the Octo-Grip. The Octo-Grip here is going to be, in my opinion, just a hint slower in overall glide speed than the Octo-Sense, right? It's going to have back-to-back, back and forth, direction changes. It's going to have a slight tug to it. And even, changing directions like this isn't going to have that kind of tuggy sensation as if you're going back and forth. With micro adjustments, you get more controlled out of it than the Octo-Sense, where overall, this is just a slower pad. Feel on the skin is smoother than the Octo-Sense, right? And the thickness is the same base, all in all. When it comes to the Obsidians are, once again, in controlled, smooth glide, right? Back and forth movements, you get a tug to it. And micro adjustments are slower than the Sense. The WL mouse skates, right, are a quicker sensation than the Obsidians and the Ryse V2 form fitted, right? With more pressure on, you obviously get kind of a slower experience. Side to side, you get less tug with the WL mouse skates, and micro adjustments, you don't really feel a tug in it at all. So this is one mouse that I would use with stock skates on this pad all day, every day. When it comes to dots, once again, controlled glide, smooth glide, until you put pressure down onto it, and it feels like the pad is kind of controlling you. If you're light-handed, right, you're not really going to feel it. If you put a little pressure behind your glide, you're going to feel a lot more controlled and a lot more tuggy than light-handed. Well, now, last but not least, the dots, glass dots, once again, nice and quick, back and forth. You get a slight little tug to it. Micro adjustments, not really a tug, but back and forth movements, you get more of a tug. Circular movements, no tug. Just changing, going right and left, you kind of feel it here and there. So overall, same sensation as the Sense with glass dots. Nice, quick. If you want something quick and you like purple pads, there you go. Now, the one thing I don't like about these pads is, one, the Sense like I said, it was like a 1-to-1 feel to the Pels, which, I mean, I already have a Pels, so there's no reason for me to even buy a Octo-Sense if I have a Pels. That's, in my opinion, how it felt. The Octo-Grip, if I want a control pad, right, if I want a purple pad that has kind of a more slowed sensation, and I will just like that kind of purple and slow, not muddy, right, just slow, then the Octo-Grip would be great. The last thing I want to talk about is that these pads came and they smelled very, very bad, and they still have an odor to them. I just don't like that. I've never had a pad that smelled like this. It's like a chemical. It's a chemical smell, where I know pads here and there will have that same smell, but this is the first pad where I've ever noticed it. So if I can notice it and I kind of have a bad sense of smell, it's it's super strong on my end. Even I had my dad come in and check them, and he's like, "Yeah, these pads smell," and he was standing at my door, right? So he can smell just the odor from these pads from my door. That's the one thing about these pads I don't like, and they'll go back in the box. I'll probably never use them again. But that's about it. Now, other people didn't have this issue, but if you want like a cool design Pels, you can pick up the Octo-Sense Last Stand that it's called. And if you want like a good control pad, I mean, it's not like my favorite, but if you just want a good control pad that is just slow, have a little tug here and there depending on the skates, I mean, the Tenta-X grip is the way to go. All right, next up, we're going to take a look at the Infinity Mice Control V2 and the Kenzu. Now, this is a nice, vibrant purple. It looks really, really nice in person. So if you like the colors, Infinity Mice does a really good job with making those colors stand out and vibrant. When it comes to the surface feel on the skin, once again, this is probably the smoothest pad out of the bunch that you're going to see today. Where this actually kind of reminds me of the Ryse, where the Ryse is going to be similar in smoothness, but I think the Ryse does a better overall job in glide and micro adjustments than the Control V2 does. Now, what I mean by that, take the dots. When I get down and gritty and I kind of push down a little more in this pad, I get a very strong, like, kind of tug feel, where I didn't really experience that with the Ryse, right? And when it comes down to just the normal kind of stock skates on the WL mouse and the Tiger Ryse V2 skates on the Viper V2, not Viper, but Viper Signature Edition, right? These feel pretty much the same when it comes to speed, even with putting pressure down. Side to side movements, you get a little tug to them, and even micro adjustments, you get a nice slight tug to them as well, where the ice actually feels slightly more open than the WL mouse stock skates. Now, when it comes to the Obsidians overall are slower than all of these mice combined, right? Where you get a more just consistent control glide, you get less side to side tug, but micro adjustments are much slower, where it kind of feels like the mouse is sticking a little bit when you try to move it. But overall, this is a slower option if you want that slower, more controlled. Now, when it comes to the dots, the glass dots, once again, on most pads that you see, these are very quick. Micro adjustments are nice and open, nice and speedy, and it changes the dynamic of the pad itself, just like pretty much every other pad that you use. So, if you don't want tug, if you don't want all that nastiness, you can go with the glass dots Super Glide V2s, and it changes just how the pad feels in general. If you want the slower out of the bunch, get the Obsidians. If you want kind of more of like the balanced options, right, where it's just a consistent kind of slow glide, but not as slow as the Obsidians, Tiger Ryse V2. I mean, if you have a WL mouse, throw on the large skates. And I would probably stay away from dots if you're heavy-handed, because this is going to be more tuggy out of the bunch that we have here, because you're pressing down into the pad. When it comes to the firmness of this pad it gives you a little more plush to it, where it feels like it would be, you can kind of see it where my finger is. It's more of like a mid-soft base, right? It's not super soft, but you still have that softness to it where you can press down if you're heavy-handed, right? And you're going to feel it. If you're light-handed, you're really not going to feel that plushiness to it because you're not putting a lot of pressure down on your glides. So overall, if you want a nice vibrant color control pad, right, that is slower than the options that I showed prior, the Infinity Mice Control V2 is a pretty good one. For me, I won't be using it because I just don't like how slow it feels and where I get a little more pressure down on the mouse. It just feels too tuggy for my liking. Next up, though, we are going to talk about its kind of like side-to-side partner, which is the Infinity Mice Kenzu. Now, this guy right here, they call it the Shogun, but Kenzu is pretty much who they collabed with to make this pad. And overall, right, the thickness of this thickness and the base are the same coming from the Control V2 and the Kenzu. So they're nice, they don't move on your desk, and they're not super thick, super tall, or dense, and they're not super, super thin. But when it comes to the overall glide on this one actually has a quicker kind of dynamic glide to it than the Control V2, which I prefer this glide over the other one all day, every day. When it comes to the micro tugs, right, the micro tug is very, very minimal, right? You don't really feel too much here and there compared to the Control V2, which is why I would prefer this one over the Control V2. Overall, nice, super, super, super smooth feeling on the skin. This one is more similar to the Ryse in overall glide feel micro adjustments than the Control V2 that we showed prior. So, if you want a pad that is just a slightly quicker Control V2, better, more openness to the micro adjustment feel, even with pressure, the Infinity Mice Kenzu is a good pad, right? Even the Obsidians, right? Even though the Obsidians are much slower than most of the skates that I've used, right? It's still pretty open in micro adjustments, right? Side to side's less tuggy than the Control V2. And it's just a better experience, a more enjoyable kind of glide and tracking experience on this pad than I did on the Control V2. Glass dots, once again, nice, quick, open. You get a little tug with this nice slight back and forth movement here, but like if you're changing directions a lot and you're doing like up and down tracking, going to right and left, it's nice and open feel and it's pretty quick. So if you want to change the dynamic of your mouse pad, throw on the Super Glide dots and you're good to go. The Tenta-X V2 form fitted, nice, kind of controlled, not as slow as a Control V2, and more open on the micro adjustments. So all in all, in summary, this Kenzu pad, I would choose this over the Control V2 all day because it is it's a more open experience, even if you put more pressure down on your pad. And one, it looks cool. So if you want a badass looking pad, right, even Tenta-X dots feel very, very good on this pad, by the way. Design, badass, looks cool, feels very, very good on skin and your skates. Overall glide, nice, controlled. Micro adjustments are going to give you a little more openness to them, but it is just slower. Good pad. I would choose this one over the Control V2. Next up, we are going to take a look at the last pad in the video. It's going to be the Blitz from the Whale. All right, last but not least, we're going to take a look at one of my favorite options out of the bunch that I showed, and this is the Blitz from the Whale. Now, my version is a 600 by 500, which is a massive, massive pad, and it is the mid variant in firmness. Now, this isn't an artisan mid. You still have a rebound and a kind of a little squish to it, but it isn't as near as like the soft or soft mids from his other options from the Pels and the Ryse. This is more firm than those alone. When it comes down to the overall glide and the feel on the skin, it's very, very close to the Artisan Zero in terms of skin feel, glide feel, and speed feel. Where I find that this pad does it kind of better is the micro adjustments, especially with more heavy-handed people, is that this pad doesn't give in like the Artisan Zero, where it kind of has a different rebound system, where it's like the plushiness of the base itself and all that. It feels better in those nice and tight movements than the Artisan Zero because you don't dig in as much. And when it comes down to the rebound, like the feel you get, like this rebounds very, very quickly. Or it doesn't really stay down, it just comes right back up. So, for example, Ryse V2 dots. Dots, I really hate on most cloth pads or non-glass pads because I press so hard on my mice that I dig in a lot on different pads. Where if I were to use dots, I would have to put such an amount of force behind my mouse that I don't even do to actually feel the bottom of the pad or feel the pad itself under the skates. When I use it, I have a nice openness feel where it's not super fast. This is more of like a balance pad than an actual like control pad where it's nice and open in micro adjustments and it just feels more clean than most of the pads that you've seen prior. When it comes to stock skates and WL mouse, right, back and forth, nice and open, nice and free. You're not really getting a tug to it. You put a little more pressure down, you get like ever so slight kind of back and forth tug, but changing directions feels nice and clean. Micro adjustments, right? It's just nice and smooth. It's open, right? That's what I like about pads that do it correctly. Obsidians are probably my least favorite on this pad because it feels very, very slow. Let me just double check to make sure there is no film on it. There is not. Just to make sure in this view because they look very, very glossy. This is very kind of like, this makes this pad feel more control oriented. And you still get that openness, right, to your micro, back and forth. You get a kind of a little more tug with more pressure you'd put down on your pad. But all in all, it just feels more controlled. So if you want a Blitz and you want it to be more controlled, Obsidians from X-Ray Pad are the way to go. When it comes down to the Ryse V2 form-fitted for the Viper Mini, this is probably my most kind of like I enjoy the most on this pad because overall, even with pressure, it feels more open and it just to me it feels quicker, it feels more open, and it feels better overall than the other three. And then if you're a guy that uses glass dots, I think you would also like this pad. I might not use them because it does feel like you will overshoot more on this because of the glass on your mouse, right? It feels like the micro adjustments are going to take a little longer to get adjusted to just because of how quick and open it is. And it feels just, actually, it almost feels a little slippery, right? So you might tend to overshoot on your micro adjustments. But it is super open. And it is the quicker experience out of the bunch. I would probably just stick to Tenta-X because the micro adjustments are nice, more and tamed. But the overall glide isn't super slow. So, all in all, the Blitz, I think, is my favorite out of the bunch that I've showed today. And if you want something that just looks cool and it feels super smooth, I mean, you could go for the Kenzu. So these two options out of the pads that I've used would be the way to go. If you want more smooth, if you want a little slower experience, the Kenzu would be it. If you want a quicker, if you want a more open experience on your micro adjustments, the Blitz, in my opinion, is the way to go because I feel like it just performs better than the Kenzu. And there you go. You have it. You have 7 different pads, all pretty much in that control kind of scenario and that type of pad, where the Blitz kind of stands out of the rest of the pads just because of how good it feels on the micro adjustments, overall glide. Everything put together makes this pad perform probably better, in my opinion, than the prior pads that I just showed. So if you like this review, I know this review is a much longer review than I've usually done, but if you like this review, give this a thumbs up. And if I've given you an option that you're going to purchase, hit that sub button, give me a likes up, thumbs up, you know what I mean? But that's it. So we're out of here. Love you guys. Rise up. God bless. And I hope you guys have a very happy New Year's.